Tribute Pod production.
Content warning. This episode contains references to themes of human trafficking, sexual exploitation of children, abuse and violence, which some individuals may find distressing.
Feeling good? Here we go. Hello and welcome to Open Secret, the power of open source intelligence. I'm Kylie Pert.
And I'm Jane Van Teenan. Thanks for joining us.
In today's episode, we'll be talking with Alisa Gbiorczyk, the CEO of Cyber Nightwatch, a security and investigations company that provides specialist OSINT support and training to counter human trafficking investigations. Alisa helps Jane and I better understand how open source intelligence, tradecraft and techniques play a crucial role in apprehending perpetrators and liberating victims. So join us for what is a moving and candid expose into the murky and dangerous world of counter-human trafficking. Alisa is the CEO and founder of Cyber Nightwatch, an OSINT trainer and practitioner, and is respectfully a survivor of human trafficking herself. Because of that, she has a passion for hunting human traffickers, educating families and communities about the threat posed by human traffickers in the online environment, and training organisations, law enforcement, and vulnerable communities to defend against this threat. Alisa has a master's from Harvard University and published her thesis on human trafficking in Billings, Montana, successfully arguing that human trafficking is not just a problem in developing countries or big cities, but something that is happening everywhere. Hi, Alisa. Welcome to Open Secret.
Thank you so much.
I think I speak for both Jane and myself when I say that we're honoured to have you join us today and for the opportunity to explore the amazing and important work that you're doing through your organisation, Cyber Nightwatch. We only have you for a short time though, so I'm going to jump right in and ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself and why it is you do the work that you do.
Oh, geez, where do I start? So my name is Alisa Gbiorczyk. I'm a CEO and founder of Cyber Nightwatch. And what I do is I hunt down, identify perpetrators such as human traffickers, anybody that exploits human beings. I train law enforcement internationally and domestically, so around the world as well as in my home country of the United States. I provide research, so I'm constantly researching on the trends, on the advancing technology that traffickers and exploiters use to conduct their large criminal enterprises. And I also advise and consult on how to take down those criminal networks as well.
You are one busy lady.
I have partners in numerous countries. I got into this work because I'm a survivor myself, sex trafficking. And so I felt called to this work to use my skills in cybersecurity as well as my knowledge and expertise in technology and the Internet of Things. And I wanted to apply that to being on the front lines, hand in hand with law enforcement in this fight against this large crime against humanity. So this is the work that I do. I like to provide training to everybody from community members to OSINT analysts to law enforcement, federal, local, as well as international police agencies. And I also advocate for other survivors to get involved in the identification and the prevention, as well as the OSINT side of this work that we do.
What an important contribution you make. Thank you so much for having the impact that you do and really bringing people with you on this journey. You know, as you say, as a survivor yourself, and I think now it's accurate to use the term survivor leader as well, highlighting the fantastic contribution that others, all sorts of different other people can lend to these grievous issues that the world is still encountering.
It's definitely. It's hard work, but it is impactful. And I wanted to use my life for something purposeful with the skills that I have.
Hey, tell us a little bit about Cyber Nightwatch. What is the impact that Cyber Nightwatch as an entity is having on the world today?
So today we are assisting our partners around the world actually on operations. We're training law enforcement. We're training financial institutions, also community members. One of the things that I find is very important is also educating our parents and our young adults, as well as young children, on the dangers of online, especially social media, because a lot of the cases that we work on and a lot of the activity that we identify is on the internet. So that's the major point of action that we've been doing recently, but also just arming our law enforcement with the tools, with the knowledge, with the technology that they need to be able to take action on these crimes and be able to even first identify them online. Because I think that people forget or do not know that these are businesses. And sometimes people's jaws drop when I say this is a business, because how could it be a business? It's a business. It's a big business. They have their own advertising channels. They have their own marketing strategies, their own profit strategies, and they are making profit off of the vulnerabilities of human beings. So we are there to also provide the information and the research so that, technology is changing every single day. I change my training probably once or twice a month at this point because it's advancing at such a fast rate in their techniques and tactics that they're using to manipulate and lure in human beings is also constantly changing. So I've kind of taken up the purpose and the drive to be able to identify these and also make others aware. Mm-hmm. Everybody from law enforcement all the way down to your 4th grade child, so that they know how to combat and prevent being manipulated by these horrible individuals, these criminals.
Amazing work you're doing there. Alisa, just picking up what you were talking about all the training and the diversity of training and the diversity of the audiences that you're training. I wonder if members of the general public listening might be asking themselves, how does this really apply to me? I thought that human trafficking was a horrible thing that happened in the world, but it doesn't really come at my back door. What myths need to be busted about human trafficking so that members of the public can better understand the issue?
So the most important myth that needs to be busted is the fact that human trafficking happens everywhere. It can happen to anybody, everywhere, any place, anytime. Traffickers target certain vulnerabilities. They will learn you. There's 2 different ways that they lure you in, right? So they either do like the fishing. So they'll just see who catches the bait, right? Or they'll specifically target you. So they will study your activity online or in person. Who do you know? They'll look at your digital footprints. They're going to find certain things that you need. If your child's posting about, hey, my mom's, going to work at this time, or my mom and dad were fighting last night, they're going to use that. They're going to say, okay, maybe this is a good time to reach out, or this is a good topic to talk to her or him about. The biggest myth that I like to say is it may not be affecting your life right now, but anything that connects to the internet, particularly, is an open door to these threats. Mm-hmm. We are now seeing that children can be trafficked. They can be exploited in their own bedrooms while you're watching TV in the living room. That easy, that simple. And you wouldn't even know.
Scary.
A lot of people think, oh, it doesn't touch my life. It's not going to touch my life. My kid is perfect. He communicates with me. Or maybe even yourself. Oh, he loves me. He gives me gifts. I haven't met him yet, or I have met him. Sometimes this process of exploitation starts 8 to 7 years before you start seeing signs. So it can happen to anyone, anytime, anywhere.
What's the root cause of human trafficking? Is it a technology problem? Is it a financial problem? Or is it a human problem? What's the root cause?
There's plenty of them. So if we're going to talk about more of the psychological end, they're going to look for vulnerabilities. Every human being has a vulnerability. We all have things going on in our life. We all have needs, human needs. They're going to find those needs and they're going to exploit them and manipulate you with them. Mm-hmm. On a more financial side, of course, just think of it this way. Human beings can be used over and over and over and over and over again, right? They can make a lot of profit off of them. It's a profitable business. So as long as it's a profitable business, and yes, there's demand, and a lot of people say, stop the demand. Well, it's not going to happen that way either. We're not able to control every single human being. We could do what we can to spread awareness, but that demand is going to be there. Technology is used as a tool. It's a resource. And that's why I always train on cutting off the resources, the tools that they use to do their business. What happens when you cut off someone's resources? They can't thrive. They can't make money.
That's right.
And that's why it's so important to continually cut their resources off, make it so difficult for them to make money, so difficult for their businesses to thrive that they do not thrive anymore. And they just move on to the next thing. I think that obviously poverty causes it, wars, displacement of persons, natural disasters, lack of education. You have to think of also the technology. Technology is not bad. Your cell phone is not bad. I love technology. I'm a cyber nerd myself. However, they're using the same tools we use every single day. So if you have 500 fish in one pond, right, and then one or two in another, they're going to go where everybody else is going. They're going to go to Facebook. They're going to go to Instagram because that's where they will be able to bring in or lure, manipulate more victims. So if we're able to dismantle and disrupt these businesses and make it so complicated for them to thrive, they're not going to be able to do their business anymore.
That's good. Because it makes my mind jump straight away to open source intelligence then in the fight. What I hear you talking about is an increasingly technological problem. What OSINT practices and techniques do you find the most useful to counter some of these horrid activities?
I have always trained myself to really get down to the basics, the OSINT framework. Start from the information that we have been given, make a plan on where we're going to go from there. And understand that we're not just trying to gather as much data and information as possible, right? And shove it into an intelligence product. Here, we're trying to create a narrative. We're trying to create, it's a case, right? So we're adding in not only technical data, but we're also analyzing verbiage. We're analyzing intent through language. I try not to rely a lot on tools here because I work internationally and the data privacy laws are fairly strict in some countries.
Bit complicated.
Yeah. So I try to rely a lot on that framework, on that basis of who are we as analysts, right? So we're trying to create a narrative, a roadmap of that data gathering process. And we're trying to identify, and we're dealing with very fragile information here and with a very short time frame normally, especially if we identify potential victims. So a lot of the tools, strategies that I use are the basic OSINT strategies, but really we're just trying to get the information so that it could be acted upon, so that we can get a prosecution, so that we can get a law enforcement officer or an agency to take action and have the information that they need to do that. That is the goal. The most important thing in our work is what information do we need and how are we going to explain that information and turn it into intelligence?
What are some of the key challenges that OSINT analysts would have when they're working on human trafficking investigations?
So I think that it depends. So if you're working on like transnational large criminal networks, you're going to have a lot of data to gather, a lot of different languages you'll have to learn or get familiar with. You're also going to be dealing with a lot of different jurisdictions. So online, there's no such thing as countries, right? So it's like you maybe work on a case starting in South Africa, and then part of your case will end up in the UK or Germany. Also, it could get pretty overwhelming because sometimes we're giving very little information. So we really have to be creative in how we address these investigations. But I think the most important struggle for us coming from a personal perspective is the content. The content can be very difficult. It can be very challenging, especially if you're looking at this explicit content for long periods of time. There's always risk that you may come across child exploitation material. So I think that it's very important that you take breaks, that you are able to take some time off from that material, from viewing that material. Even verbiage or copy can be hard mentally. And no matter how expert or how long you've been doing this work, it's still going to take a toll on you and you're going to burn out. So it's important to also have someone to speak to, whether that's a psychologist or even a friend or a colleague that's able to be like, look, are you doing okay? Do you want to talk about it?
I think you're absolutely right. And I did actually want to ask you if you had a regular routine of self-compassion or self-care for yourself that you employ that you'd be happy to share with us.
Oh, yeah. So I'll be honest, like I'm working on this routine.
Aren't we all?
Oh, yeah. So, I'm a hunter, so I love to hunt. That's what I love to do. I always said it's my therapy. It's my healing for my old trauma. However, I have a ninja, so I like to ride my motorcycle. I like to just relax and read. I like going out in the country, walking. I like to work out, of course. I like going to the gym. So I've made sure that I also take breaks during the day, that I ensure that I don't work too long, because sometimes you get into that analyst mode where nothing else matters in the world. And then you realize, oh my gosh, it's 5 a.m.
And I suppose that's a risk, this business in particular, when you're working with real-time outcomes, I would imagine. When you're on. And the idea is to keep going until there's a result. Someone's saved or someone's in prison, but then we don't really know how long that might be. And that can take its toll on probably especially junior analysts.
Junior or senior. I think we all struggle with that. I mean, I always say I got into this work because I have that mentality of I need to find things and I'm curious. This is something different. You really care about your work. You're not just there punching your time in. You really put a lot into these cases. You get to engulf yourself in it, and you care about identifying the victim or identifying a POI.
Person of interest.
You put your heart and soul into it. You have to be very careful because, yes, it could kind of engulf your life because this is what some of us are made to do. I think everybody struggles with it. I think if you really care about the work that you're doing, sometimes you're going to risk burning out because you really do care. And we do want to find that information. It's just making sure you have a strategy in the beginning and boundaries with your work. That's really important. And you'll find that it's more effective that way.
Does it require some discipline too?
Oh, yes. Discipline, because sometimes I'll forget to eat.
Well, it's no good if you go down from not eating. We need you. So,
yes.
You've mentioned there, about what individuals can do who are kind of engaged in this really important work. What about managers in or around those kinds of, people who are looking at this sort of content and engaged in these super important investigations? How do managers and work colleagues and peers support the person who's engaged in the work?
So I think that, managers, especially if you're overseeing analysts, it's important to have that open communication with them. I know that there's some professional boundaries there, but also this is mental health that we're talking about here. It's important to have those conversations and make sure that they have access to mental health services or even know who to call when they need it. And making sure that, before you do this work, that they are also equipped with what to expect. And if they do feel a little uncomfortable and if they want to take a test into the job, they should allow that. It's very difficult. And we all got to put our pride aside. Sometime we'll be like, look, I need to focus on my brain. I need to go relax and separate myself for a bit and then come back in.
It's really humbling, isn't it, to admit vulnerability?
It is, but it saves lives.
Just on that element you're talking about, looking after mental health of people, making sure they're okay while they do some grueling work. What about the security aspects of the role of an OSINT analyst? What kind of responsibilities does an organisation such as yours have to ensure that individuals are kept safe while they are hunting online? I'm going to come back to the word hunting because I think we might need a definition there.
So I always make sure that, we have OPSEC in place, depending on what we're doing. If it's an operation, if we're doing research, there's always OPSEC. So I even wrote a blog on it on my website, how to ensure that you're safe, especially if you're going to go into the dark internet, making sure that you protect yourself, your own digital footprint. We all ensure that we use virtual machines, VPNs, that we make sure our identities are not disclosed and that we do everything safely. Safety comes first, always. And then also the safety of the victims that we identify. Their safety and their security is also number 1, too, in our eyes. And then hunting. So hunting, I use the word hunting because I'm hunting these predators. I'm hunting these traffickers. I'm coming to get them. I always say, curse the day you end up on my desk. I'm going to find you. I'm a hunter. I love to use that word because that's exactly what I am. I'm looking out for them. We're the eyes in the dark. We see victims. We hear them. And we're going to come and help them gain justice that way. So hunting, I like that word better than identifying or OSINTing,
me too.
Whatever other people use.
Yeah.
But
it's powerful.
I like the fact that it's a little rough. Yeah, you should be scared of me. I'm scary. Trust me.
Absolutely. And we need you to be. I agree. I think the word's really important. And even if it is emotionally laden, I think that's highly applicable to the context of the work that you're doing and actually reminds everybody that while you might be online looking for information, there's someone there who's waiting for you to save them, help them. find them. And so hunting the perpetrators is really important.
I have a question on the back of that, like just sort of a discussion about hunting, and just to shift the conversation a little bit. I feel like you've given us a really good sense about how OSINT can aid the hunting process or the investigation process. I'm really interested in some of the work that OSINT analysts do and the learnings that are generated, how that impacts preventing or protecting people from being trafficked.
I do this a lot with my classes for parents and students, children, or just community members, really. I don't think that they realize that anything that we post on the internet, how much information we can gather from that. I know a lot of people are posting about this, but, back to school pictures. I know what your child's favorite candy is. I know their height. I know what they look like. I know their teacher's name, what school they go to, what location they're in. I can easily just go up to them, be like, hey, here's Skittles, right? You have like a 4-year-old little boy. They might run up to me and take the Skittles. So really any information that we post online is public, and it's being used to lure, manipulate throughout the whole exploitation cycle, from grooming all the way to exploiting and manipulation. So I think that giving that knowledge to parents, to the community, of not even just saying open source intelligence, because that kind of might not mean much to them, but making them understand that the digital space, anything that we post can be used to manipulate you, can be used as a threat. Any vulnerability can be used as a threat, and they're being used as a threat, as a weapon. If we don't start thinking of these threats and these exploiters and predators, traffickers as intelligent individuals, which they are intelligent, they are OSINT savvy. They are experts because they're using the same tools, the same techniques that we're using to identify them in their tactics to identify and go after victims.
What technology trends or platforms are traffickers actually using currently to traffic people? I know this evolves a lot and changes. It's changing every day. But currently,
all of social media.
TikTok.
Yep.
Snapchat.
Yep. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Element app, a lot of decentralized networks people don't really know about, but they're using them. A lot of forums. Even the Bible apps being used. Anything they're going to use. They're using all the ones we use. If we're on them, they're on them. We just got to start thinking that way.
They're thinking creatively and cleverly about communities and people and their vulnerabilities, aren't they?
Oh, yes. So if we are able to explain that in a way that helps parents and community members and children understand, that will help prevent more victims. I think that OSINT's being used two ways here. It's just whether it's being used for criminal activity or to identify, dismantle these networks. They're probably the best analysts I've ever met in the way that they use their techniques and tactics. So we got to be better.
Yeah. How do we get better? How do we, the good guys, how do we create the OSINT edge for the people who are hunting?
I always say it's through practice. It's through going out there, getting your hands dirty, learning their techniques, tactics. That's why I always try to make others aware of the next tactic, the next application, the next technique, because there's a lot going on, right? And our advancing technologies and cyberspace and metaverse and all that, like parents don't know, like they're stressed out already, all right? People doing that research is really important. And that's why I've kind of made that our mission steps is ensuring that we do promote and make others aware of what they're doing out there in cyberspace. Because sometimes parents don't even know what cyberspace is.
Yeah.
They don't even know what meta is. They don't understand. So I try to make it so that they can understand, so they can take prevention steps. And I walk them through that. And so the best way for us OSINT analysts on the good side is to go in there, get creative with how we identify them, keep up to date on their tactics and techniques through practice, through observing, through creativity. So I think that we're on a good track. If we just continue to push ourselves beyond our own capabilities, I think we'll be in good hands.
Do you think there's anything holding us back, us OSINT professionals? I mean, there's challenges, I know, we've addressed those, but if you had to pick something, what's holding us back from going to the next level?
I think it's just that having that creative edge, also having more opportunities for our young population to have different jobs or maybe even internships. Paid internships are important.
Education.
But giving those, just like I say in the human trafficking space, but really bringing up our youth. They're our future, not closing off to them, but being there to mentor them, being there to walk them through the loops. I came across a high school student that was incredibly intelligent, had this tool that he had built right on his own. And he's like, look, I don't think it's great. And I said, what are you talking about? It's incredible. And so if we continue to nurture our youth and motivate them and encourage them, teach them and invest in them, I think that that will benefit the community as well as help us grow and become stronger.
And just on the parents and community, with your training in how to keep safe, how receptive are people to that? I mean, it's pretty confronting. It's complex. It's hard enough for OSINT specialists, this kind of work and this kind of problem, complex problem. How receptive are they to taking on board that they play a really important role in prevention?
I don't think I haven't met anybody that's really not receptive. Everyone's very interested now. I think that it's becoming a topic of concern. And parents are wanting to learn more. Community members are wanting to learn more. And I'm very glad to see it. They're asking great questions. Communities are coming together. Support is coming together. People are starting to get fed up with this crime.
Yeah. As Kylie said, it's a complex crime, isn't it? It's a multi-dimensional crime too that you mentioned earlier. I'm interested in what are the ideal multidisciplinary approaches to apply to this problem in terms of how we actually create great outcomes together.
So it's going to take legislation. It's going to take law enforcement training. It's going to take training for our hospitals, our medical professionals. It's going to take training of our technology companies. Big tech needs to be involved. It's going to take governments needing to be involved. It's going to take community members also caring about this issue and voicing that they care about it. It's going to take young students. It's going to take everybody, to be honest. It's not one-sided. It's a crime that affects almost every discipline, everything from psychology to medical to our financial institutions. I love to train them because they are a vital part in combating this crime. It is a money crime. It's also going to take the internet service providers. It's going to take teachers. It's going to take everybody. Everyone has a part to play here. And that's what I try to say is like, this may not affect you directly, but it does impact your industry where you are in life. It's every part.
And why are survivors so critical to unlocking the best efforts against countering human trafficking?
Survivors are important because they can provide a lot of knowledge, a lot of their own skills, expertise with that lived experience in their work. So I firmly believe that having them involved at every step of that process of countering human trafficking is extremely vital to the fight as a whole. So hiring them in your company, hiring them in your nonprofits is something that I also promote too greatly because I see it a lot where a lot of them are, not paid for the work that they do, that they become re-exploited in this work. So I think it's really important that we take care of them. Like me in my work, many times I've just decided that I'm going to be in the front lines. I'm going to fight. I'm not going to share my story. My story is not going to define me. Now I'm just going to use all of that pain and passion to continue forward and hopefully inspire other survivors that, heck yeah, you could be in the front lines and fight and use that towards this fight. So they're important. Yes, very important.
You're giving me goosebumps, Alisa. Yeah, very evocative.
Yeah, very much. The presumption seems to be that the issue is mostly to do with vulnerable women or women survivors. I'm wondering if there are male survivors who are also engaged in this kind of work.
I'm really glad you asked that question because it doesn't discriminate by sex or gender. It impacts males just as much as females. Statistically speaking, it's a female problem, right? Females are impacted the most. However, I don't like to speak in statistics because it's a hidden crime. We have no idea. And also, I think that we are also developing skills to be able to identify males of exploitation. We're not there yet. And everyone should be just as concerned for males exploitation as female exploitation. It does not discriminate.
There's been quite a shift in my thinking. According to US State Department and the UN, human trafficking can include, and I'll read now just so I cover everything, sexual exploitation, forced marriage, forced labor, use of children as child soldiers. I personally didn't appreciate that. Domestic servitude, organ removal and harvesting, debt bondage, sex trafficking, which is probably the one I think that most people quickly jump to, forced prostitution, and forced begging.
It's really not how we think about trafficking, is it?
So I'm wondering, in your work now, do you see organizations having a tendency to fight certain types of trafficking as opposed to, is there more interest, more money?
Like I said, I also fight labor trafficking and organ trafficking. Really depends. I mean, a lot of nonprofits and organizations, they're funded by the donations of the community. We're just now getting people to care about sex trafficking. We're really far from organ trafficking. It's too gross. People don't even want to think about it. Labor trafficking, let's be real. People think it's boring. It's not scary. It's not horrifying. They cannot grasp it. And I always say this, it's not sexy enough. But if they see a little boy being used in labor trafficking in the Middle East, they're going to care more about the little girl being sold to a 60-year-old man in Tijuana, Mexico. People don't care. And that's unfortunate because a lot of these nonprofits that do great work, they're funded by their donors. That is one reason why I left nonprofit work. I mean, organ trafficking is just as horrifying. Labor trafficking is just as horrifying. But until you're there, until you see it, people can't relate to that. Like I always say, it's not sexy enough. It's horrible words to use, but it's true. Sex sells.
Sex does sell. It's very brave and inspiring that you left nonprofit work because you were sick, really. I'm hearing the summary of having to kind of hook for the purse string. Oh, look at this really emotional story that I've got here. Thank you. Please give your donation.
I left nonprofit because I was exploited for my labor. Before I was even openly a survivor, I started my own company because I got tired. It's been a struggle since then, of course, but at least I know that the work that I'm doing is actionable and it's good work.
And you can control it.
I can control it, yeah, because I was re-exploited by the one movement that was supposed to support me.
Disgusting.
And it broke me. But it didn't let me stop. I did not give up because I knew I could be used to make an impact, and I could also make an impact on other survivors that may be in the same position as me and not know what to do. So it's not all daisies and roses over there, that's for sure. Through this, I found good nonprofits that do support, that do care, and they are out there. Just make sure that you're always doing your research when you're supporting a nonprofit because it's not always what they look like on the outside.
Yeah, good advice. Alisa, do you have any advice for anyone who would be interested in getting involved in counter-human trafficking efforts? It doesn't seem like an easy thing to get involved with. Need a lot of skills. Definitely a lot of interested people who want to work and be part of that effort.
It definitely depends on what you want to do. Of course, I always say reach out to your local nonprofits, do your research as we spoke on them, and see if they need any help volunteering. There's any job openings that fit your skill sets and expertise. There's also, if you're into like OSINT work like me, there's a lot of nonprofits that do a lot of events, of course, where you can meet people, other like-minded individuals, and you can get started on the training of that. I also mentor. We do one-on-one and classes too. If you're interested in getting involved in this work, you can go online onto my website, cybernightwatch.com. And I fill out a form there. I love to mentor. I love to teach. But really, I just say that reach out to your local nonprofit. They need help. They definitely need help. They need volunteers. So that would be my best advice.
Good advice. You've written about Cyber Night Watch's efforts in respect of countering human trafficking as a consequence of the war in the Ukraine. How does human trafficking typically play out in conflict zones?
So we see that anytime that there's a vulnerable population, which occurs during war, for example, the Ukraine refugee crisis, we already knew that they were already knowing where those vulnerable populations were going to go. Those women and children. The men are going to stay back and fight. The women and children are going to go on foot, through bus, on train, and they were already waiting at the borders for them. So we see that a lot, that they will go there as opportunistic traffickers or exploiters, and they'll feed off their vulnerabilities, such as needing housing, needing jobs, needing transport.
So a large displaced, vulnerable community.
Oh, yes. And then you also see that it's happened so quickly, right? So a lot of the law enforcement, the nonprofits, they're not ready. There's chaos. There's a lot of influx of people coming over the border. It's hard to have the right mechanisms to be able to identify these traffickers and identify and prevent, and also provide awareness to the communities crossing over so they know the signs, they know what to do, what not to do. So it's very important that we also acknowledge that anytime that there is displaced people or any type of crisis, and I'm saying that humanitarian or war, conflict zones, there's going to be traffickers, there's going to be trafficking, there's going to be criminal networks.
And the work you do with Medics for Ukraine, can you say a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. So I'll be training their military, their community, their schools, teachers, and their medical professionals on human trafficking, how to prevent it, how to identify it, basic human trafficking awareness training, and so on, and can continue to raise awareness in their country.
An excellent contribution.
So what's next for you and Cyber Night Watch?
What's next is, we're going where the criminals go. We're going to find them, hunt them down, and continue the good work that we do, continue to train, continue to advise and provide research and mentor other OSINT analysts. We're going to continue to support our law enforcement. So we're not going to stop until they're all gone. We're in the trenches. We're in the fight. We're ready to go. That's where we're at.
Is there anything that we haven't discussed today that you think listeners of our Open Secret podcast would be interested to hear?
I would just like to end it on this is something that we all need to pay more attention to. This is something that is growing, and this crime is rampant, and we need to start taking this stuff seriously. We need to start talking to each other. We need better communication, and we need to start getting uncomfortable with our communication. We're all so scared of being uncomfortable. And yeah, this work is uncomfortable. This topic's uncomfortable, but it's going to get even more uncomfortable.
So is being sex trafficked.
Yeah. I'm ready to have the difficult conversations. It's just all up to all of you listeners if you guys are ready to have them too.
Alisa, thank you for joining us and leading us in a very candid and insightful and difficult conversation. I also like a good confronting conversation that brings a reality home that the world isn't perfect.
Yeah, fighter. I see a fighter in you.
There's a bit of fight in here.
I see it.
This is probably one of those areas that I would love to do more work in.
Well, let's go. Let's do it. We start tomorrow.
You've been listening to Open Secret, the power of open source intelligence. Open Secret was created by Kylie Pert, Amanda Shane, and Jane Van Tienen. A podcast by OSINT Combine. Make sure to visit our website, osintcombine.com, for information on how OSINT Combine can help you find, analyse, and act using open source information. Open Secret is recorded on the lands of the Cubby Cubby people. OSINT Combine acknowledges Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the first Australians and traditional custodians of the land where we work, live, and learn.
A Tribute Pod production.